Kenya's long-held desire is to become an industrialized nation. And according to sessional paper number 10 of 1965, the dream was well set out. But unfortunately, we have always missed this target. The Vision 2030 is a well-defined document that shows how the country can become a newly industrialized nation by the year 2030. Of course, there are a number of things that we need to get right. Well, this week on Inside Government, we are talking to Ambassador Kaberia. He's the PS, or Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Industrialization. He's now joining us to help us understand what are we doing as a country not to miss the boat by the river come the year 2030. Thank you very much indeed, Balozi, for finding time to be with us here. You know, as I have alluded, I mean, when you study the history of this nation, there has been a long held desire to make this country a manufacturing hub, not just in the region, but in Africa. So many documents have been crafted. Technocrats have been brought on board to help in the realization of this dream. And the question that has eluded for quite a long time is, why have we always missed this opportunity to become an industrialized nation?
Thank you very much, O'Brien. It is a pleasure to see you yet again. And thank you for granting us this opportunity, at least to explain from where we've come to where we are. Today, I'll say Kenya is at a very advantageous position. Kenya has done quite well so far, and Kenya is way en route to attaining the Vision 2030 dream. Why do I say this? You know, between 2010 and 2014, a lot happened, and in 2014, Kenya was declared a middle-income country. Since then, Kenya has continued to grow at way over 5.56% every year, including last year when we had COVID. Kenya was among the economies in the region or in Africa, and indeed around the globe, that actually did not tank completely. We look forward to this year being a lot better because the fundamentals are in place. If you ask yourself, what are the benchmarks? What are the standards that we use? What are we actually basing our dream, our Vision 2030 on? There are quite a number of things. And if we can just speak in layman's language, the most important aspects to this is cost of living, standard of living, access to the basics like housing, security, healthcare, education, and the rest. You can name them in a long list. And when you look at all those aspects, Kenya has incrementally improved in almost every single one of those aspects. So to me, I think we have done quite well so far. We have yet quite some to do, and we're working quite hard to make sure that this is done.
One of the issues that has always been picked in our missed targets is that, number one, you know, the cost of energy has always been highlighted by manufacturers as one area that has made Kenya highly uncompetitive. The other thing has always been infrastructure. And of course, we have seen deliberate effort by the government to invest significantly in infrastructure. Would you say that this has laid a solid foundation for Kenya's industrialization agenda?
I would say, if you look a few years back, we didn't have even enough energy for our own consumption. Today, we have extra energy with us. We have also entered into other agreements with the manufacturers so that for those that operate at non-peak hours at night, their power is at more competitive rates. If you look at the number of people applying now to come and produce in Kenya, not even for use in Kenya, the list is growing and growing rapidly. The special economic zones that we have and the EPZs that are there, the numbers of people coming in from textile to other areas are increasing by the day. This is because the environment that has been set by these additions are actually beginning to bear fruits. I'll give you an example. If you look at the value of the SGR initially didn't look that active. But now, with the ability to get your goods delivered directly to Nairobi, or very soon to be delivered to Naivasha, and eventually to Kisumu, this makes a lot of difference. You've seen an interlink between the old standard gauge railway, the SGR, and the meter gauge railway. There are links coming up now, allowing the network to grow even wider in terms of service. When you look at the road network that has been developed in this country, anybody who left this country before 2010, coming today, will actually be surprised at the extent. I have lived abroad as a foreign service officer for a very, very long time, over 2 decades. And to tell you the truth, every time I came back home, one of the first things that shocked me or surprised me was, wow, when was this done? And this is almost entirely infrastructure. What is the relationship between that and the manufacturing base? For us to be able to grow the industrial base, you must establish a network through which the products that are produced in these factories can reach the market. So infrastructure and that road network, railway network, reliable air transport are all very, very important to manufacturing. Secondly, when you have an environment of peace as we have in Kenya today, that is another addition. And when you look at the advantage that we have in terms of access to the sea, it gives us yet another additional advantage to being a very attractive manufacturing base. So to me, I think we have what it takes. We have the opportunity now, and the kind of policies that are being developed serve very well to get us to attain the Vision 2030.
In 2017, when President Uhuru Kenyatta unveiled the Big Four agenda, and one of it is on manufacturing, he was very clear that the whole point is to try and jumpstart the contribution of manufacturing to GDP from then about 9% to around 15% by the year 2020. We definitely know that we have missed this. We are still stagnant at about 10%. And when you look at the industrialization roadmap, it talks about also improving these from 9% to around 15% by the year 2022. When you look at the challenges that has been brought about by the coronavirus, can we say that we are confident enough to get to 15% contribution in about 2 years' time from now?
The belief is we are still on course to attain the 15%. If we miss 15%, I will be surprised, because one of the things that we have embarked on is development of agro-processing, development of small to medium-sized enterprises across sectors. Also, establishing devolution has become a great advantage to this, because then a lot of the industrial base, especially small to medium size, have moved out of the capital. If you go to many of the county headquarters, you'll find a lot of production, for example, even from bakeries to small to medium-sized cottage factories. They have all set up there. If you look at the agenda support, take housing and manufacturing and how they support each other. One of the fastest growing areas for us is the construction sector, or the construction industry. This is because the demand for housing has a direct relationship to the drive in manufacturing. If we develop, or if we build about 500,000 apartments, that would mean we need 2 million doors, assuming that each apartment has a minimum of just four doors. You can do the math for the windows, for the locks, and a few other things. The carpenters are also in on the same. So there is a lot of relationship between one aspect of the big four and the other. And because of the support that is coming in, the demand that is increased by trying to improve one, then we see growth and getting closer and closer to the promised 15%. Now, what is the main challenge to this? Of course, everyone knows 2020 was a lost year for a lot of people in the world. COVID-19 affected us very negatively. It seems 2021 will be better, but not back to where we would want it to be. So my hope is by development of cottage industry, good infrastructure, support of SMEs, and the right policies to ensure that these entities are given an opportunity to flourish will help us attain the 15% contribution to GDP. And that is what we're working towards up to now.
You know, manufacturers have always called for the development of a fund that they can always tap into, you know, in a bid to expand their operations. There has always been this desire, you know, to merge the Industrial Development Bank with ICDC. And this would have created, you know, a huge funding pool for many companies, especially in distressing times like the one that we are living today. We know this proposal has always been there, you know, within government circles, but it has never been implemented. Is this something that now we need to relocate and try to accelerate?
In fact, thank you for that question. In fact, right now we have a program that is bringing together quite a number of players in that line you've named. ICDC and IDB, these are all coming together to form one big operation. We also have in the State Department here, the KIE, Kenya Industrial Estates, and all these work towards support of industry, both in funding and technical capacity. We are working also very closely with the education sector to ensure that we tie a development of skills to the development of industry, because if we're going to succeed in this process of sending to the mashinani, to the counties, more and more production capacity, then we have to have people that have the requisite technical ability to handle this. So to me, I think, yes, we are working towards establishing a support system through a development bank that will be able to come in to aid people during hard times, but even during good times. It's important to ensure that industry has access to easy and affordable, competitive credit. If we are able to do that for our mostly medium-sized and smaller industries, we will increase production, increase capacity, and also enable the creation of a lot more jobs than you could imagine. I think today, Kenya, like any other country that's developing, needs to ensure that growth of industry translates directly to growth of jobs. Remember, in Kenya, we are very, very young, 75% under 35. That is a very young country. And that part of our population is still growing. So for us to be able to gainfully accommodate these people, the small to medium-sized sector of our industrial expansion must grow.
I'll be coming back to that issue of, the population dividend. And as you are saying, Kenya is highly favored because it has a young and mobile population. But before we get there, back in the year 2015, when the industrial transformation strategy was launched, there was a strong desire to set up an industrial fund. Where did we get stuck on this?
I think,
which was actually supposed to help SMEs, to access low-priced credit.
Yes, indeed, we have, in the sense that we have KIE and MSEA, the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, under which an umbrella is being developed to support most of these cottage industries. If you look at under that, we have in every constituency the development of a center where all the support can be provided. Again, trying to work towards a single-stop facility for all business support to small and medium-sized enterprises. If you take, for instance, an area like dairy, if you need any registration, and somebody else is in animal feed production, someone else is in transport, all those are brought together, and there is an establishment of a structure that is able now to give support to this. There is also the cooperative movement, which is again getting a lot of support and strength to try and ensure that this is accomplished. But in the sense of the fund, as it is, MSEA is working on developing a fund to support that process. But I wouldn't want it to look like we do not have the actual support for SMEs, because that is the largest agenda at my desk right now. If you see what is being developed to ensure that cottage industry has all it requires, not only from government, it's even being done outside of government. 2 weeks ago, I was at a launch with Equity Bank, where we were launching the fund to support SMEs affordably and efficiently. This kind of support is also supported by a credit guarantee program, which makes funding more accessible. Because one of the bigger challenges in supporting or giving credit to SMEs is not the lack of money, it's the cost of money. And a lot of times it had to do with collateral. What do you give? What stands in for this? If I am growing French beans, it is not enough for me to tell a bank, if you give me 500,000 shillings, I'll be able to grow my crop, sell it, and pay you back. But with the credit guarantee program, even commercial banks are now stepping in and saying, yes, we are in a position to support this. So yes, the fund is being developed to become stronger under the micro and small size enterprises. And at the same time, we are developing the policy system to ensure that the same is accessed not only from government, but also from the participating private sector institutions.
The other issue that has dosed the manufacturing base in this country is that you have a situation whereby imports have grown to about 40% of the country's GDP, whereas when you look at exports, we have stagnated at about 15–16% of our GDP. And this is a bad situation whereby you're importing more than what you're exporting. How do we plan to balance this and try to even it out?
We're giving a lot of support to Buy Kenya, Build Kenya program. Even in our procurement policy today, there is a higher requirement for us to ensure that we are working with products that are Kenyan. When you look at manufacturers are getting incentives on the basis of local content in their products. So the higher the amount of local content in your production, the better the incentive that you can get from us. At the same time, we are also working to ensure that there is easier and more affordable way of getting the local products to the market, not only in the cities, but also in the rural areas. And therefore, there again, you see coming in the value of all this infrastructure, because infrastructure has had a very heavy part of our development in the last 5 years or so. And that is to ensure that then those areas are open to receive, open to give, you know, because you look at agricultural communities in the Rift Valley, in Central, in other parts of the country. Many of them have the right climatic conditions to produce a lot of things that were imported before. But with the infrastructure that we have today, we are able to consume from almost any market anywhere in the country products that are either grown or manufactured or made in Kenya. So that is the direction we are headed.
One of the discussions, that is taking place right now is whether as a country we need to rethink on the issue of export compensation scheme. I mean, it had its own challenges back in the 1990s. It was abused, but the fact that it was abused doesn't make it bad. It means that probably maybe the structures or the people who are set up to look at the structures, had a problem. But when you look at some countries, you're talking about countries like Singapore, you're looking at countries like South Korea, China, they have some form of export compensation scheme for their local manufacturers, whereby you are compensated and encouraged to export more in order for the country to get more FDI. Is this something that we are likely to relook at, going forward?
The incentives that we are giving to our manufacturers and the types of manufacturing that we are licensing is almost equal to that compensation scheme, in the sense that if somebody is setting up at the EPZ or the SEZ, and now we have Naivasha and we have Dongokundu and others are coming up in different parts of the country, the more this develop, the better it will be for our people to produce for export. The incentive scheme or the incentive structure that is developed for this speaks greatly towards that encouragement for the manufacturers to export even more. The kind of agreements that we are also setting up or even having with other countries, Kenya is extremely attractive to a lot of this. If you go to Europe, we're working with the EU. We have the trade agreement with the EU. We have a trade agreement with the UK. We now are in the negotiation for a trade agreement with the US and many others. We've had a long-standing relationship with countries like Japan. In fact, Japan just the other day pronounced itself that Kenya is their most important destination now for their industrial development for Africa. And a lot is going on in that space. And I think Kenya is geared or set to really grow. So FDI coming in and us having a sustainable development, sustainable production system are part of the doing or what we're working on right now.
Very well. And the other concern that a lot of investors have raised is the issue of intellectual property and a flow of illicit good and of course also illicit money into the country. Where you have a situation whereby 7 out of 10 items being sold in the country counterfeit good. I mean, this is not definitely good for a country like us. How do we plan to accelerate efforts towards curbing, the spread of or the sale of counterfeit products and, of course, intellectual property?
You've seen the kind of streamlining that we are now putting at the port, meaning the goods that make it here will have to go through the system. They will have to be analyzed properly before they enter the food chain, so to speak. At the same time, we have expanded our inspection units so that we are able to reach further, quicker, in more efficient way, and ensure that whatever is reaching out there to the public is not the counterfeit, but at least standardized goods. We are also making sure that the industry is producing competitively in terms of pricing and in terms of quality, so that it's not only enforced by the agents from government saying this is a bad item, this should not be on the shelf, but also by the market, where the consumer comes and says, I will pick this because it is better quality, higher quality, better priced, and at the end of it all, we are all Kenyans. Build Kenya. Buy Kenya, build Kenya.
Finally, as we come to the end of this interview, how would you assure Kenyans that the dream of making Kenya a newly industrialized nation in about 9 years' time from now is still valid, and the government will do all that it is within its powers to ensure that this dream is achieved?
Industrialization or industrialized country, by definition, will mean a country that is able to feed its people, is able to educate its people, is able to provide the highest quality of healthcare, is able to provide the standard of living that is desired by everybody. And there are different ways of judging that. But then looking at also the future and where the world is going in terms of marketability of your products, you know, acceptable consumption by your own people, and at the end of the day, capacity to sustain those industries that continue to produce for this type of lifestyle or this standard of living is really what has been set by the system that we have built the last 5 to 10 years as a country. If you look at areas like ICT, Kenya is cutting edge. We are still amongst the top in the world. When you look at infrastructure here, Kenya is still a very, very competitive destination, be it by air, by sea, or even by road, as is right now. When you look at security, Kenya is a very secure country. By any measure, anywhere, anyone can come and live in this country and live peacefully, safely, to either do their work, do their business, or to come and invest as a manufacturer or in other way. So in another 9 years of continued implementation of our plan, by ensuring that we have put together the right policy, the right access, and the openness that is needed by the rest of the world, Kenya for sure in another 9 years should be amongst the newly industrialized countries in the world.
And so it's possible to say that even here in Kenya, it's possible to do it.
And in Kenya, we are also able to do it in 9 years. If they could do it for 40 million in Brazil, we can do it here for 15 million.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador, for joining us here and helping us understand where we are in terms of Kenya's industrialization agenda.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Very well. We've been talking to Ambassador Kaberia, Principal Secretary in the docket of industrialization, trying to understand where are we exactly in terms of making this country an industrialized nation. You have heard it from him. My name is O'Brien Kim, and you have been watching Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We'll do these again on Thursday. Until then, have a good time. Bye.